is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Our guest today is Emma Laurent, who is a writer, has a background in working political campaigns, and is currently working her ass off to protect reproductive freedoms in Wyoming. Reproductive rights are our topic for today, and we're going to touch on what we can all be doing to make our voices heard during these trying times and upcoming election cycles. Thank you so much for being here, Emma.
Hi, hello.
Why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction and background on your work in politics and what eventually brought you back to Wyoming?
Yeah. Born and raised in Wyoming. And for those of you who don't know, Wyoming is a small state in ye olde Union. Only 500,000 people live in Wyoming. So I, grew up very much interested in human rights and civil rights. But was also just in such a small, kind of your typical conservative state, except also everyone has cowboy hats on. Uh, that kind of, led me to be like, I really wanted to very much like rage against the machine when I was younger. So I went to the University of Wyoming, which is our only university in the whole state, just so everyone knows. The options were, endless for me. And I was really lucky there because I think because I was like one of the only like political science students that wasn't also like, playing football. Because that was kind of the major at the time. I think that they were shoving all the football players into. I did really well, and I applied for this internship in Chicago. It was 2012 to work for the Obama campaign. And what I say is kind of like white girl affirmative action, because they were like, ooh, no one from Wyoming has ever,
No one in Wyoming can spell Obama. You're
Yeah.
hired. Like,
Yes. So I don't know, but I did feel like I was like finally like I was like, oh, like I got noticed. I got noticed. So I I had to like leave school. I got on a people train to Chicago. I never knew that trains held anything other than coal. And so that's why I was like, I can't believe I get to ride a train to Chicago. And it was the best. And so I will now forever and always have like a really soft spot in my heart for Chicago, because Chicago was like really the first city I ever interacted with it in such an intimate way. And so I, moved to Chicago, got this internship, had a lot of trials about learning to ride the public bus and using, I'd use my compass a lot in the city because I just didn't understand like north, south, east, west. And I got asked to join the campaign officially after about a month. And by saying yes, I remember this being really, really dramatic for me. I was like, who did I say yes? Like, because I thought in that moment I was like deciding my entire life, because I think that's my like Virgo rising in me, that every decision must mean something. And it was a little scary because I did have to officially drop out of school to join the campaign. And I know kids do that now. I think kids like take gap years and da da da. But that just like was not, I didn't know anyone who had ever done that. And it really meant like giving up scholarships, et cetera, et cetera. But I was like, kind of like, fuck it. Like, you
yeah.
gotta do the thing, right? So, anyway, I moved to Florida. That's a whole book in itself about a little Wyoming girl on the coast of Florida, encountering like working for the Obama campaign at the age of 19 when, I'd really done nothing in my life at that point. But that's what got me started on campaigns. That's all to say. And so that was like my big like emphasis in how I got involved. And it was truly because I was volunteering at college. Like I was going to the Democratic Party and asking to be volunteer for them and be an intern for them. And eventually they had just introduced me to a gentleman at the time who was working for the Obama campaign in Wyoming. He was the only person that was ever going to be sent to Wyoming. And by just volunteering with him is how I got, like the actual internship with the real campaign and all that jazz. So after that, I went back to school. I did finish school, but I then launched into my career. I graduated at 21. I think I just turned 21 when I graduated college. And then I was immediately on one campaign to another. And what that means, though, too, is you are moving every 10 months. So basically, from 19 on, I moved to a different state every 10 months until I was about 26. And I was working for a bunch of other candidates, senatorial candidates, but gubernatorial. My most proud, though, will always be working. I worked for Hillary Clinton for 2 years, and
Hey.
uh, worst years of my life and the proudest thing I've ever done. So, but eventually, I honestly, I hit a little bit of a wall when I was in DC these last few years, just because of the political culture. Yes, Trump and blah blah, fuck him, but also I didn't love that the work I wasn't doing, I couldn't see the results of it, working day to day. And I was missing home in a way that I never thought I would be, because I truly had believed at one point that I walked out of Wyoming forever and was going to, do the little girl, big star kind of
Yeah.
narrative. And I just found myself wanting to be home. So, long story short, I came home this last January. It's the best decision I've ever made. And right when I did, there was this organization that was starting. They were called Wyoming United. They're who I work for now. And they were looking to really professionalize advocacy in Wyoming. And Wyoming is it's such a different state. We're so small. So I think outside of the kind of the political scene everywhere else in the country, Wyoming just doesn't have the same resources, the same training, the same um, culture of volunteering as I've seen in other states across the country. And I just saw this as such a cool opportunity to really start from scratch and try to build something I could really put my arms around. And reproductive health, if that's where I'm, there's so many issues that you can care about. There's a list forever and forever that goes on. But I really, since the Dobbs decision and realizing that the United States government truly, in law, do not see women as equal citizens, that women are second-class citizens, it's just become the number one issue that keeps me up at night, is thinking about reproductive health as by way of our citizenship, that my status as a human in this society is only determined by what my body can and cannot do. And I think growing up, as a, millennial, is you didn't realize the sexism in day-to-day life when you were younger. We just didn't. We saw girls on TV. We had Sabrina, the Teenage Witch. I lived in the equality state, for fuck's sake, where we had the first woman governor. And it wasn't, it's not really until you get older that you really just start seeing the commodity you are to people and the day-to-day control people put over women's bodies.
Yeah. And, you know, I think for one thing, they've made reproductive freedom a one issue title. And what ends up happening is my brain explodes because, very recently, someone was talking about their PMDD symptoms. And like a jackass, I was like, oh, are you officially diagnosed, or are you like me and you're just tailoring a plan for yourself to feel well because you'll never get diagnosed because you don't have the time or the money to sit in front of a doctor and argue for days and years and months? just to be told, yeah, your periods are really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's bananas. I saw it was like headline news, I swear, like 2 weeks ago. And it was like gynecologists finally taking women's pain seriously with IUD insertions. And I could not believe it was a top headline. And but then again, I think about my experience with IUD insertions, and it's caused like legitimate trauma that I didn't even know I had until very recently. I went to my nurse practitioner, who's brand new. She's like my age. I just thought she was lovely, and she explained to me that what I went through for an IUD insertion, where people are physically holding you down to put it in,
Hmm.
is called vaginal trauma, and it's real. And she was like, "Oh yeah, we have ways to numb you." I don't know why nobody tells anybody that.
It's the same with our yearly pap smear,
Yeah.
where it's like you're made to feel like a dork or a dweeb or a little bitch for being like, can I have Tylenol before you scrape part of the inside of me away? And they're like, no. And then they just do it. And luckily, I had a nurse practitioner at a women's wellness clinic that was like quick about it. And like, but I also had a really traumatic when I had to go off my health insurance due to COVID unemployment. um, I had a traumatic experience where the woman like literally manhandled me, called me fat, and then sent me on my way telling me I was a moron for thinking I had breast cancer because I felt a lump too close to my period. And I was like, well, no one tells us what our period does to our body. Like, no one
Well,
tells us.
that's horseshit on so many levels. When I was 16, I had a lump removed from my breast. So like, I'm like, I
Yeah,
guess this is an audio format. I'm shaking my finger.
we're all shaking
Um,
our fingers.
yeah, I do remember that. God, I was living in Chicago, and I was on, I was buying my own healthcare at the time. And so they send you to like Chicago County Hospital. The lights are flickering like a fucking horror movie, right? And they just see women once a week, and you just have to show up like on time on Tuesday at 7 a.m. and hope you can get in to see an OB. And the OB that was assigned to me was this ancient old man, which fine. I don't care. It's when he then looked at me and went, I have to have another nurse in here now going forward. I need a babysitter.
Ew.
Before we can start your exam. And then I had to be and then he only like did like my vaginal, and then I said, hey, can you check me for breast cancer? And he's like, what? Why do we need to do that? And he was like, well, let me go back and get my babysitter. And he had to go get another nurse to come back in because he like hadn't completed that as part of the exam. Like that's the state of women's healthcare, is people who don't like make us feel bad for wondering about our bodies.
Well, and then if the actual act of seeking healthcare as a woman isn't demeaning enough, you are standing in front of professionals in our legislative and government systems and begging them to take women's health care seriously, and are met with, I'm sure, a litany of language and stories that will keep me up at night. But are there any highlights you'd like to share about how these people in a political setting where they get to decide whether or not cancer screenings are free or abortion is available, or there has to actually be so many hospitals, clinics, doctors' offices per capita, per population, or whatever? How are they talking about my body when they're sitting
Yeah.
in those meetings?
Um, get ready. Hold on to something. Um, there was a bill this last session, and it was called "What is a Woman?" And right, they're just trying to define pronouns and like what is considered a woman, and all this bullshit that apparently matters so much to the day to day of people. And how all the bills work is, someone will write a bill, right? They will then present it to the committee that they believe it belongs in. But if this session, Wyoming has a very short session because we're just a citizen legislature. So in our general, we only meet every other year for general, and then every other year is in our budget session. And so you have these like 8 weeks to pass these bills. So the legislators, God bless them, are you know, they're at committee meetings start at 7 a.m. and then they go until they're released, and then they have to go home, study theoretically. If for those, many have told me they don't, so that's
Oh,
fine. Yep. Many have told me they just don't do it. And then they get up the next morning and do it again, which is, really, really, really hard work. So then after that, if their committees are too clogged up, right, they will start sending bills to other committees. And the reason I say this is because the What is a Woman Act was sent to agriculture, and somebody got up, which is fine. We
hmm.
needed that bill. Someone needed to talk through that bill. But I swear to God, a woman got up there and said, I'm so glad that this bill is in agriculture because we understand breeders.
Ah, why do women hate other women? Like,
Oh,
ah.
it was awful. And that, and there was another bill. There was so much this last session. There's another bill that recently has an Supreme Court injunction on it right now. So hopefully, we're waiting overall on the Wyoming Supreme Court to rule that abortion is legal. So, but right now, you can still get an abortion in the state. But so this last, also during this last session, there was a bill that was mandating women who were seeking an abortion must then not only wait 48 hours, but then also must receive a vaginal ultrasound.
Oh.
And let me walk you through all the things that are wrong with that. First, in Wyoming, we're talking total of 8 healthcare clinics that for sure do like 8 Title 10 clinics that serve a rural population and with maternity, with cancer screenings, STIs, etc., as part of the docket. Many places in Wyoming now don't even have OBs, PAs. They have to drive over an hour minimum to often go to just the doctor. And so, if you do live in a town that has a good hospital system, let alone a hospital, there's it's still hard to get healthcare with doctors who are going to talk to you with the full range of products with the full range of options that are available to you as a woman, and that's assuming you want to keep your baby, right? And so with this idea that you have to wait a full 48 hours. So, right, we're saying women have to figure out childcare. They have to take off work take off work. They have to figure out how to often get 4 hours across the state. And we're talking mountain passes. We're talking, you know, super icy, deeper roads as you traverse 8,000 feet up one side of the mountain and have to go down another 8,000 feet. Like, these are not your average conditions for, driving to another town to seek medical care. And so let's assume you do all that. You get there, they tell you gotta wait 48 hours. Now what? Do you go back? Do you find a hotel? Can you afford to stay in a hotel? Also, now you have an extra 48 hours where you are being told by the government that the government doesn't trust you because you are a woman and the government doesn't trust you to make a decision. And so they really need you to think about it. And the lawmakers would say this. They're saying, yes, we absolutely want to make sure that they have to think about it longer. And that is, it's, it's so unjust because no man has to think about his medical decisions. It's easier to, get a gun, right, in any other state than it is for a woman to seek an abortion. So after a woman waits the 48 hours, then she would then have to go under a transvaginal ultrasound. And some of our lawmakers talked about how this was just akin to what every woman just has to do anyway in her yearly visit is get poked by a wand that is the length of my arm. And that's just part of it, like that's just part of being a woman. And that's what was so frustrating was it's almost like we can't even start at step 5 of trying to explain why forcing a woman to undergo a transvaginal ultrasound to view a fetus that she doesn't want, uh, because our lawmakers are already just assuming that just to be a woman, why wouldn't you just feel pain? Why wouldn't you just be uncomfortable? Because that is just stepping in the door of being a woman. And that is what is so hard is like in this movement, we are fighting to have these like constitutional conversations around like forcing women to do procedures. But then our legislators are just, they're, eating rice and pudding and they're just being like, yeah, what? But what? What? Like, it's just like we're fighting on 2 different intellectual levels. And it is so hard. It is so hard. So half the time, like you go in there and you'd be like, let me read you the Constitution. And the Wyoming Constitution, which says that each sound individual can make his or her own healthcare decisions. And they'll come back and they'll read it back at us and they'll be like, but this wasn't talking about abortion. And
Because what if that fetus didn't have a chance to talk about their own medical care?
literally,
Yeah.
literally. And it's just so frustrating. And again, it's like reproductive health, only a fraction of what we're talking about has to do with abortion. Those just happen to be some of the most harrowing stories that we're fighting for right now. But really what it comes down to is how people think women should be treated in the healthcare system. The fact that state senator got up and said, this shouldn't even be an issue because women do this anyway, was one, such a total misunderstanding of what a transvaginal ultrasound is.
Yeah.
And 2, was reprehensible because she is a nurse. The state senator was a nurse who said this and believes that our current state of how we treat women in the healthcare system is just fine. It's just okay. And listening to just my story and your story of like going to OB appointments, and I would say we're educated women who know a lot, we're still put in these crazy vulnerable moments. And so God forbid someone who just isn't able to in that moment stand up for themselves, because why would they? They're talking to their doctor, they're talking to their nurse who's supposed to trust and protect them.
It It is so normalized in my own head, and I'm sure the heads of others, that women's healthcare is at most a circus. I went with my very trusted nurse practitioner who had been doing my pap smears for years. I went in one day and it was when I was teaching and I was exhausted. And I don't know if anyone else has taught, but some days you just have days where you're dead inside. Like you're just going to answer every question quickly so you can get to bed. And she asked me, "Hey, Natalie, we have medical students here today. Can one of them watch your exam?" And I said, "Sure," because I'm dead inside. And I guess I love Grey's Anatomy. Like, I was like, yeah, people got to learn. And my sister
One of those
later,
residents has got to fall in love with you,
yeah, someone has to fall in love with me.
How else is it going to happen?
How else? Is there an elevator? Where's the Bainin elevator? Um, my sister was like, Natalie, what do you mean? I go, so I'm stirrups up, like flaps to the wind, all of it. And in walks this 12-year-old boy who's going to be a doctor. and and he gets to listen to me tell my doctor what's going on with Grey's Anatomy and why I can't let go of it. And because I'm a comedian, I just start laughing and riffing on this to be like, can you imagine that I'm so tired that I didn't ask you if a prepubescent boy was going to be in here for my vaginal exam?
He
Like,
actually 12 or did he look 12?
he looked 12.
Okay,
Like,
okay.
like how
Yeah,
whenever they get new cast members on Grey's Anatomy and you're like, that woman is 11. Like,
totally. I
yeah,
just wanted to clarify.
he
I just
was
wanted to
not
clarify
he
to
was not
protect
a
to
teenager.
legally protect you.
Yeah, he was not a teenager. And like that happened in a doctor's office where I've had nothing but good experiences and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, women's healthcare is a joke. Let the babies in to come watch me do it. Like, I don't know. Or the fact that like my best friend thought that it was perfectly reasonable because she had no other choice to always have like her infant twins in the middle of her breast exam, needing what infant twins need because who else was going to hold them if not her during her breast exam?
Mhm. Yeah. Yes. 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 It's what was it? I saw some stat and I wish I could quote it, but I can't because when I say I saw some stat, it means I was listening to a podcast and someone read a headline. Um,
And someone said a number.
and someone said something, and I went, and did they actually read the article? Probably not. They didn't either. But it was right that we know more about how to get to the moon than we know about women's reproductive health, let alone women's pleasure, right?
Yeah. Can we talk about how I literally know nothing about menopause? I'm looking 4 years, actually three, because I'll be 36 in December or 37 in December. So we're looking at 3 good years until 40. And when people are like, hey Natalie, what do you know about premenopause? I'm like, hot flashes, the end,
The
whatever it's
end.
been portrayed as on TV.
The
And
end.
my mother um used to be so frustrated because every time she went in for her yearly exam, they would tell her that she had a youthful uterus, like one that a 20-year-old would possess, and she's wanted nothing more than to just be done with it and to have menopause.
Can we, can we hold on? I want to back up. A youthful
A
uterus.
youthful uterus.
Is she like playing volleyball in there? Is she doing like cartwheels? Is
I was
she
like, Mom,
doing
you
volleyball
got
shots in
I go,
there? Like what's a youthful uterus?
I was like, Mom, you have got to keep up on your baby birth control because I am too old to have a baby sibling. Like, I'm just too old to go through the eldest daughter bullshit again. So I need you to be on it. And she said that. So then I started looking up things on menopause, probably on TikTok. And someone told me that you can be in perimenopause, and that just means like the pre-menopause. Like I kind of feel icky, but I don't think that like I've lost all my eggs or whatever happens. For up to 7 years. And I'm convinced I'm in it.
You probably are. I mean, there's a good chance I could be. I only know about perimenopause from, again, from the deep dive, from listening to
Yeah.
comedians talk about what could or could not be happening to their bodies. And I'm like, huh, something I should, but to your point, like, no one sits us down and goes, let's talk about menopause. No one sat us down to even tell us about, really like how many holes are down there. I remember, I tell this story.
Not the
It
holes,
was,
because this is embarrassing because I was an adult too when I'm like, holes?
well,
What?
I wasn't, but I was 12. I'd been on my period for maybe a year. And I was on vacation with my mom and her friend. And, I went to the bathroom and I was on my period. And her friend was like, what are you doing? And I was like, because I was like ripping out this dry tampon. And I was
Oh,
like, well, I got to pee. So I got to take out the tampon. And she was like, no, what?
no.
No, no. And then she just was like, she's like, you take it out every time you pee? And I'm like, yeah, because no one had told me to that point that we had two separate holes. Like everyone just assumes you know this, but like we are so shamed to even like look down at our vagina and explore, let alone understand the difference between like the urethra, which is so teeny little. But anyway, I just remember her like calling out my mom through the bathroom door, and she was like, Gail, you're about to save a fortune on tampons.
God, I love moments like that between women when someone's just screaming at another woman through a bathroom door. Hey, don't now worry that big box of tampons is gonna
Last,
work, is
yeah,
gonna last.
gonna last. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me a reason to use my Southern accent today.
Oh,
Like,
shoot. I sometimes I think people think I have a southern accent. I think it's just country,
no,
and
it's country. Yeah,
I
it's
think
what
it's
we believe
country.
is country.
But I'm sure people will listen to this and be like, "Oh, why'd you have a southern accent?" And I'll be like, "Because I was nervous."
And honestly, you said Wyoming, and I was like, I should talk in my drop dead gorgeous accent the rest of the podcast. And it was like, that's Minnesota.
Yeah, yeah.
What is geography?
But even talking about accent, I love to tap dance and paint blush onto people at the same time.
My favorite movie. And I never want Gen Z to see it because they'll be so angry about everything that makes that movie fantastic.
I understand that deeply to my core.
But yeah, like I don't know anything about menopause. I don't know anything about, and like I had sex ed in Indiana, which means I didn't. By the way, I had to take a family, not even a family planning. But it was like it was a special, it might have been called child development. It was something that was basically home ec, but also you ran a daycare within the high school and like baked
Oh,
muffins and there were robot babies. So like whatever that class is called, and anyone who is in my high school currently or remembers the name of that class, please let me know. I took it. Probably because by then I was like, I'm gonna be a teacher, so I'm gonna have to know about these kids. And I got a robot baby or whatever. And they didn't. I'm pretty sure family planning was in the name of this course. Did they tell me about I took it because it was the only class that they talked to you about birth control.
mhm.
Like you would have sex ed in health class and it would be abstinence heavy. And then this class actually talked to you about birth control and condoms. And I think I only wanted that experience because of Grease too. I was like, well, I want to live a very Grease 2 lifestyle. I'll take the condom
I mean,
class.
dust off that diaphragm. Um, totally. No, it's bananas. I had a very similar sex ed experience. And what's crazy then too, so ours was we were lucky that we had this ancient little old lady come in and talk to us about, birth control. We wanted to just raise our hands and ask her all the questions. And, we were just so pumped to be like, what's this? But then the unit I remember the most, and this is also such a part of the reproductive health conversation, and we really just need to embrace it, is how this affects also LGBTQ plus people. Um, because we are talking about bodies, we're talking about hormones, and we're talking people's agency over their bodies. And, unfortunately, when most people think of Wyoming and they think of like, what's the one thing I know about Wyoming? It is often the murder of Matthew Shepard.
Yeah.
And so this is inserted into our sex ed unit, is this story. And I remember our teacher brought in a gal who had been in college at the time or high school in Laramie where this happened, something like that. Like she was, quote unquote, closer to the situation than we ever could be. And the entire, her entire speech was about how this murder only happened because it was a drug deal gone bad. We didn't touch on any other topic. The only other thing that they did was they said, raise your hand if you would be friends with a gay person.
What the fuck?
And, obviously my hand shot up and I looked around the room and said, yeah, you want to fight? Because I don't, also this, like, the seriousness of what was happening does not hit a 16-year-old brain.
Yeah.
Like, and it's menacing. It is vile to think that that was considered quote unquote good sexual health education. And what drives me bonkers is when I am talking to legislators now and I say, okay, so you don't want us to teach sex ed in school. Who should teach it then? Like, that's my question. I will be like, great, that's what you want to think. If that's how you want to phrase it, I want to be solutions oriented when I'm having these conversations and not be, the person that comes in and tells them why they're wrong. I am here to listen to our legislator and hear what they have to say and ask questions. So I say, then who does do it? And their answers often go, just, in the family. Well, guess what? To your point, I don't know what the fuck menopause is. I didn't know we had another hole down there until I was 13. Like, who is equipped to teach people this? And they're just so afraid of it that understanding our bodies is somehow a contentious point of morality. And it is just simply who we are.
And we don't have to get into it, but I am currently hyper focused on the Matthew Shepard thing because I feel like I've watched every Matthew Shepard adjacent Lifetime movie. Like, right? Like, that is something that I feel like, especially for our age group, we were very aware it happened. Probably, especially you growing up in Wyoming. I When you said drug deal gone wrong, that's the first time I've ever heard that part of the story. Like, is that part of the story?
That is the narrative that folks like to sell so that way it does not look like it was a hate crime, but just a drug deal gone bad, and that had nothing to do with who Matthew was. And
I
yeah, that's definitely what we were being taught.
Jesus Christ. And this is why I think that Lifetime should have its own streaming network that I pay $1 a month to revisit old Lifetime movies. Because literally, I was like, I didn't even think drugs were involved in that case. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't
See,
matter.
it doesn't matter.
It
It
was
doesn't.
horrific.
It does. Yeah, exactly.
It
And
was horrific. It was probably the first time people my age, especially where I grew up in Indiana, had to be like faced with like the dangers that people of the LGBTQ AI plus community face. And it was like something that, and again, there were no adults in the room that were going to guide us on how we talk about this, how we feel about this, whatever. But I remember there being so much fear around queerness in general that, again, this is what happens when you're in your 30s and going, am I fully straight or was I scared out of being queer? And it's like, and it's because millennials grew up in a really fucked time when it came to
you had to raise your hand and say, "Would you be friends with a
would you
gay?"
be friends with a gay person?
I didn't even know if I was, at that time, definitely to your point of like, I had no concept of if I was queer or not. But here I am also having to state to my entire class how I feel on the topic.
I really feel that like, well, and then like I don't know if this also happened in your sex ed classes, but my sex ed classes only wanted to give us the fear of God when it came to like AIDS and HIV and STDs that you could carry for a lifetime.
No, I think we didn't even really get to that, if I'm being honest. I feel like I don't think our school, I'm still grasping what the AIDS epidemic did to this country and to queer culture and queer history because we lost so many storytellers. None of that was brought up in our school. Not at all. It was just don't get pregnant, don't be Matthew Shepard, don't do drugs. Um, next
What? Yeah.
next week is driver's ed and health class.
It right. Taught by your gym teacher. All of the health classes taught by guys who play dodgeball.
Yeah, I mean, legit. I remember I still think about the shit that they taught us. Like, we had a unit on square dancing, but no one ever taught me how to like use a credit card.
Yes. Yes. I did have a class that taught me how to balance a checkbook or whatever. It was an elective. God knows why I took it.
I
Probably to
think
get out of
checkbooks
something.
are super relevant.
Yeah. Probably to get out of another class. But I just remember getting into a fight with that teacher because I was like, a big Claire's girly, and Claire's always had a BOGO sale going on. So he asked us about our last BOGO purchase. I was at Claire's on Saturday, and I got this headband and another headband for $4, and he's like, "You just paid $2 for those headbands. You didn't get anything for free," which is technically true, but also what a dick. And I was like, "But today, if I went to Claire's, I would be paying $5 per headband. It's still a deal." And just like arguing with him back and forth, like, don't you condescend to me about my
This is
Claire's
this
purchase.
is what I can relate on. This is how I'm spending my money. And that's honestly, frankly, how I'm still spending my money is on
It's on BOGOs.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. Our teacher, what was it called? It wasn't called, it was called like prepare yourself class or whatever. The only story I really have of her was she didn't believe in dinosaurs and just told everyone that they were big cow bones.
Not big cow bones. Good
And that,
God.
and I don't know how that fit into balancing your budget, but it must have.
I had an algebra pre-cal teacher who told us if we prayed hard enough, we'd understand the functions. And I'm like, God has abandoned me. I don't know. I cannot do this math. And yeah, that's hard to be 15 years old and grappling with whether or not God has abandoned you. And that's why you can't do math.
Well, then he's abandoned all women.
Yeah, he's abandoned all. Like, and then I was like, well, then I guess the devil's on my side because I used to skip that class a lot on test days so I could take tests during his study hall, which was when he was coaching women's basketball, and I would cheat. Just
I feel like that
fully
was
cheat.
God. That was
Like,
God working in your favor then.
oh, it was God or the devil.
It was
But
it
we
was God.
found our loophole.
Yeah.
It was the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit. It was Mary Magdalene doing me a good one.
Good. As you should.
Yeah. He would just be like, well, maybe do a couple of, like, he would just get frustrated. He would get frustrated teaching us and he'd just like tap the board. And then finally he'd be like, I don't know, go read my 10 Commandments poster. And it's like, we're a public school that should not be up.
What
I
did you
will,
say? You can't? You can't add to 10? You can't count to
I
10
can't
yet?
count
He
to
hasn't taught
10.
you how?
God has abandoned me.
Stuck on 2.
I'm stuck on two. I feel like, okay, this is also just a funny question I want to ask you. When watching Parks and Rec with the Amy Poehler, was that relaxing or was that, no, I've heard people talk to me that way?
Um, what's funny is, uh, is my initial gut response.
Yeah.
So I think what I love about Parks and Rec is it is much closer to what my life was like on campaigns. And I liked that because we had a lot of people who would come into campaigns and thought they were going to live this West Wing life. And a lot of times they would come in and they'd be very privileged. They just want to work in politics, but they don't want to do the hard work of like organizing people and organizing volunteers and working the long hours, right? Folks just want to wear a suit and take pictures with like important officials. And something I would say in interviews to, try to shake people would be, one, I would try to talk them out of the job. That was the big thing when I worked in politics is the best thing you can do is talk somebody out of the job because if they still want it, then that's someone who has some grit and wants to actually do the hard work theoretically. But I would straight up and I'd just be like, this is my Parks and Rec. It's not West Wing. And that is something that has helped me a lot. And like when you are in meetings and you are kind of like looking at people who like was the ag committee going to start mooing at that woman after she said, women are breeders, you have to find humor in it. But what's hard is a lot of times it's closer to Veep. Life is closer to Veep. And that's coming from your electeds. That's coming from like your like political professionals. And so honestly, when it is Parks and Rec, it is a like chef's kiss of a day because you can have honest conversations with people who care about their community at the end of the day. That is nice versus when you get a lot of lobbyists who are just getting that paycheck to come make a statement in front of a camera, that is the worst part to deal with it. But if you are talking to someone who's from Wyoming, who's from a community, and regardless of what they believe in, even if we believe so differently, you can usually figure out what they care about and find common ground. Because at the end of the day, we do care about our state. I don't know. Does that answer that question
It
about
did. And honestly, out of those 3 shows that you referenced, I have only seen 1 episode of The West Wing, but I have watched Parks and Rec and Veep in their entirety. So,
Yeah, Veep is scary and how gross and real it is. And
God, I
West Wing
love
will make
Veep.
you, yeah, West Wing will make you believe. And I think someone was saying like West Wing is like directly responsible for people getting into politics during the Obama era. And I fully, fully, fully believe that.
Yeah.
But the reality is shit's Parks and Rec.
Oh my God, I love that. Okay, well, to bring it to the local of it all, I think
Mhm.
part of the problem that I and people on TikTok and people who are in these smaller communities, and even what ends up happening at during election cycles, is we focus so globally that we forget that all of the work happens locally,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um, so if I have just moved to a new area and I'm pissed and I got to do something with all my feminine rage, where do I start? How do I start making moves so that we start eventually getting people invested in local elections, getting invested in truly anything that isn't a one party issue or anything like that?
Yeah. So there's so many different ways you can go about it, right? You can make such an impact if you were to Google like nonprofits in my area and, start from there. But the first thing I want to say is like the best way to make an impact is first just to be an upstander in your community. In these communities where having these conversations are hard, they are disruptive. Even if you are just simply correcting somebody on a derogatory word, can suddenly shake the whole foundation of the conversation you're just having. Be that person. Be that person who's having a conversation with their coworker who calls out bullshit if someone says something just not true about women, about queer people, about reproductive health. Call somebody out if they use the term prostitute instead of sex worker. Find just have these conversations up front and be an upstander in the moment is to me the biggest thing that you can do. And that's how we start to change culture little by little. And hopefully that little by little becomes bigger steps. If you want to get involved though, like kind of more hands-on, I would look for your local Title 10 clinic. These are clinics that are supposed to be funded by the federal government to be resources to folks specifically in rural and underrepresented areas. And from there, they could probably connect you with any of these other movements that are doing more political work or more nonprofit work. But a lot of times these Title 10 clinics are also, they need help. They need help to keep the lights on. They need help fundraising. They need people to be there to answer the phone when the nurse, if they only have one nurse and that nurse is seeing a patient. So that's, a lot of what we can do for reproductive health. The other thing I would say is learn who your state senators are and your state legislators are. We are so, to your point of, we're so fixated on national politics, and it's a big deal. I'm not saying it's not. But the fact that some guy down the street who hasn't taken down his Christmas lights is my state legislator, uh, and he is the one determining what I can and cannot do with my body is cuckoo bananas, to say it lately.
Yes.
And so, and my friends who are, we vote, they show up to, but the biggest thing, and I can tell you this in Wyoming, it was like only like 9% of the public voted in Wyoming in 2024. And it's like you just have to vote. It's so annoying to have to go to meetings and talk to people about, like, we got to get out the vote. I'm so annoyed with that terminology at this point in my life. But it is true. But I think the way to make that happen is to make it hyper localized. Don't talk about, like, oh, here are three candidates running for state house and here are their political parties. Be like, hey, no, that's Joe, and he's got a flat tire that he hasn't fixed in 20 years, sitting out on the porch. Why would I make him my state legislator? Why would I make him the person that is in charge of deciding what to do with school funds if I can't even get him to, pay a parking ticket, whatever have you? So get to know these people, like get to know them as humans. And that's also how you're going to find great candidates. You're going to find great people who, because they're not entitled shitheads, don't think about running for office. And that's who you want to run for office. You want those teachers, you want leaders, you want people who don't want the credit to be the ones to go up against specifically these people who say, when you ask them, you go, why'd you run for office? And they go, somebody said I should. A lot of times the answer I get, somebody said I should, someone said I'd be good at it. And they go and do it. You want that person who doesn't want to run for office, who thinks running for office sucks, because it does.
Because it does.
And that person is going to be the best legislator because they're going to work their ass off.
And part of the reason is only because he was a guy who taught at my high school while I was also in high school. I think he still teaches at my high school or whatever. But he also runs as a Democratic candidate for something. He runs for something. And I see him everywhere. Like, I'm at the county fair seeing Ludacris and he's volunteering and I shaking hands, asking people how their kids are doing, asking people if they're ready for school, whatever. I'm at trunk or treat downtown with my nephew and him and his wife matching costumes, fucking handing out candy and high-fiving local business people. Like, I do think that that makes a difference.
It absolutely does. Something I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sit down and meet with every single person in our entire statewide delegation. Like I am driving over the mountain, I'm driving 6 hours here and there to have these meetings. And our organization is nonpartisan. And really where I'm coming from is I just want to talk to good legislators. I want to talk to people who believe in like the basics of government. And what's such horseshit is half of them aren't even checking their email, that they get a stipend to use, right? Like that's what is so fresh. So like at least, in Wyoming, and I'm sure this is going on in other places, is we have legislators who don't know what their jobs are. They don't know they're supposed to check their email. They don't know that they have a stipend given to them every month to take citizens out to coffee. So that means they're just pocketing it. And these are really, really small things that make a huge difference when we are only paying attention to national politics and not thinking about how Joe down the street, who's got his Christmas lights up, is not checking his email address when you elected him to go to a session that's only every other year.
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy, he goes to hospitals and holds premature babies, and it's like, number 1, I didn't know that we could do that. And I'm like, "How do I sign up?"
Maybe you can't. Maybe you
Maybe
can't.
I can't, um, but he can for the photo op. No, like, literally, it is one of his volunteer platforms, and, like, okay, he's at Ludacris, he cares about the millennial vote. He's at the vagina monologues, he cares about enough about women to try and get their vote. Like,
Yes. Right. And sometimes, right, I feel like your best politician is not someone who's worried about the vote, but worried about the community. And yes, politically, that would be an awesome person to manage because I could be like, look at all the crazy, all the great things he does for his community. But it's like, you want somebody who's going to do that on their own, or more, you should be somebody who's just going to be involved in your community on your own. So that can look right. That's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't have to look like getting involved in politics. It can simply look like you are going down to your Title 10 clinic and you're seeing how you can volunteer. You are volunteering for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and you're using that relationship to have within, appropriate bounds, to have healthy conversations about birth control and about queerness. You can join, go do community theater and be a rebel and do a play where they have a woman character who doesn't have a child. Like, I see those things as not acts of rebellion, but being active in your community. And it can look so different for every single one, but you have to just kind of find what that niche is in your community. So my biggest thing, especially, I think everyone, they go, oh, if I was just a different person, I would do all these things, da 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 da. Best advice I can give anyone like 30s and up is if you see something on Facebook happening in your community and you're like, oh, I'm kind of interested in that, just go. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed about going or not. Just go.
Did you
Get a
listen?
girlfriend. Go.
Did you listen to Chelsea's episode about the article? It was one of her viral article episodes, and it was basically like Republicans are sexier than ever, and they're young and they're hot, and they go to the clubs. And it was, I'll send you the episode.
No,
But
I have no
basically,
idea.
but it did open Chelsea and her guest, who I'm not going to remember off the top of my head, but she was fantastic. It opened up this conversation about like one of the best things that the conservative party does is it like gaslights other people into believing like you're welcomed here and we're gonna have fun and we're never gonna dog on you for like taking your garbage in early or accidentally using a slur or whatever. Like we're never gonna do it. And I think if we could also kind of removed all of these external pressures to be the perfect activist and instead just start, we'd move mountains. I don't have a perfect Facebook past. Like, no. I was a millennial. Hillary Duff had to tell me that gay was a slur. Like,
I think, no, I think you're right. It's like it can look so small, the impact you want to make in your community. And it can be truly like, I'm just going to go to the library and help with the literacy program. Like, it doesn't have to be these big, huge things. But I hope, like, by like find those issues that you do really care about and depoliticize them. Like, to me, reproductive health is not political. It is personal. That doesn't change that the world has made it political.
mhm.
And I have chosen to work with my specific skills in the political arena. But so many people can work for reproductive freedom, for reproductive access in a quote unquote non political way by caring about it and having healthy conversations about it to everyone around them.
And part of the reason that broadening the scope of reproductive health beyond abortion makes politicians so nervous is because we aren't having those conversations enough. So they don't know how to answer you when you're like, what about epitomic pregnancies? And that pregnancy has to be terminated. And then they're glitching in their brain because they didn't consider women as people to begin with. So the glitch happens because they're like, oh, a woman might have a medical emergency, and that's a gray area. So we have to continue to push them on things like that.
It's bananas. Like, we have these legislators who are out here. Oh, going back to the law, the transvaginal law that they passed last year. It wasn't that you only had to get it if you were seeking an abortion. It was not required of you to get it if you plan to carry a pregnancy to term. So any arguments about, well, we want to make sure, it's for the safety. Well, then, so it sounds like you already don't care about the safety of women who want to bring a fetus to term, right?
Right.
Because it's hypocritical. It's not coming actually from a place of care. And especially when you have doctors, we had doctors testify and medical experts testify and be like, this is so unneeded. Like, it doesn't make a medical difference. And oh, I just lost my train of thought.
But it also, hey, is that transvaginal ultrasound free? Or is it just another thing that I'm going to have to fight insurance to tell you, well, the law made me have it. Like,
That's Let me bring up one more thing just to fuck you over and blow your mind.
yes.
There are fake women's clinics, and everyone needs to be on alert for these fake women's clinics. You will see them because they will advertise free ultrasounds, but what they are is they are often called crisis pregnancy centers, or frankly, they are just anti abortion centers.
Yeah.
And they mask themselves as women's clinics, but their entire job is to talk women out of having any type of real decision making power that isn't, I will have this baby. And what our lawmakers don't know, and I've sat down with lawmakers in Wyoming who sponsored bills to protect these centers that they know nothing about because they read about them and they go, well, it's a women's center. Isn't that enough? But they've done no research as to what these centers do and how they shame women into keeping pregnancies, on top of providing them with false medical information, because doctors are not working at these clinics. They're usually run by volunteers and actually have zero medical expertise. So,
Oh,
yeah, they found funding to get an ultrasound machine, but they are not actually equipped to use it. I talked to a woman who went to one of these centers when she was 20 because why wouldn't you? It's in a college town. It says women's center. It says makes it look like it's supportive for women to make all types of decisions. And because there was no medical expert to do the ultrasound that they told her she had to do the transvaginal ultrasound to herself while a volunteer watched.
no.
And that is that is the state of women's healthcare. And so I'll sit down with these legislators and I will, they'll be like, well, we should protect the women health centers. I go, I agree.
Uh,
Let's talk about Title 10 clinics. And then I'll be like, how many Title 10 clinics are in the state? And they'll be like, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll be like, I want to talk about your vote about protecting these CPCs, these anti-abortion centers, because you're thinking that they're just women's clinics, and they're not. They're
yeah.
not. And there is a great there's a great documentary I ask everyone to watch. It's a heart tugger. It's called Preconceived, and it's a lot about these CPCs going into towns and acting like they're going to take care of women, and then as soon as they have the baby, much like we hear all the time, they're out of there. They're out of
Wow.
there. Their job is to convince you to have a child, whether you want it or not, whether you are healthy enough not to have it or not. They have no medical expertise. Their job is just to convince you to have a baby. And that is terrifying. I wouldn't if I were pregnant and I wanted that child, going there would be the wrong answer too, because they're not going to support your child. They don't have the expertise to talk to you about any fucking thing.
No. And like, the government is your child's first deadbeat dad. Like, literally.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anything about the man who impregnated you, but like, the government is your baby's deadbeat dad. Like,
And I
because
want the government to be my British nanny.
yes, super nanny, come help. Come help us, super nanny. Like,
Yeah. That's who the government should be.
oh, yeah. Because again, and again, I cannot reiterate that that is how you know that it is about control. It's about controlling women. It's about getting women out of the workforce. It's about making women know day in and day out that they are second class citizens in this country, and therefore husbands can treat you like a second class citizen in your home. And you can just follow the line of thinking with some of these husbands, honestly, because they're watching Fox News all day long telling them that women are the problem and women are the enemy. And that's how they're treating their daughters and their wives.
Let me simplify it with just this one little closing story. So say is control over women's bodies starts at such an early age, and it is so implanted into our culture that, frankly, even the good men, the good women, they don't know they're doing it. And I was thinking about this. I was in my local coffee shop home. I was walking across the coffee shop on the wood floors, and I'm wearing cowboy boots because I'm living in goddamn Wyoming, something that everyone should be used to. But because it was kind of empty, my heels were making a loud sound, and a man turned to me who probably had no idea the impact that he had on me that day. And he shushed me.
Oh,
My heels were too loud. And I've really sat on this story. I've been really thinking about this story about I was just too loud in that moment. And he believed it was his job to shush me. And that's where, yes, we can be like, oh, he's sexist, da da da. But it really comes down to it is so embedded into our culture that our bodies are not ours to control. And once you start seeing these examples, you will see them everywhere and it will drive you fucking bananas bonkers. Like, you'll never sleep again.
I
Welcome. You're welcome.
you're welcome. I was recently told at a gaming convention to smile. I
Oh.
I was
Mhm.
literally just waiting for my dad to get out of a shopping moment so we could go to lunch. Fiddling with my earring. Like I'm literally just like minding my own business, standing, waiting patiently out of the way because there's thousands of people here and they're all trying to get somewhere. So I have removed myself from the throng of people. And I'm just fiddling with my earring. A man moves into my eye line purposefully and doesn't even speak to me. He makes a pantomime motion at me that I should smile. And I just like looked at him.
It's my duff. Fuck you.
Yeah. I just like looked at him and he was like, "Smile, this is a fun occasion." And I was like, "I'm literally just waiting for my dad. Like I'm waiting patiently." And he was just like looking, he's like, "But are you having a good time?" I was like, "Not currently." And then like
Also,
and then
none of your goddamn business.
none of your business. Who are you? And like this is a gaming convention that I've been to since I was 15 fucking years old. I like if he had like been working a booth or whatever and had called me over to look at something because he saw me waiting or whatever, I have had nice conversations like that. Someone trying to, take advantage of my quiet peace to sell me something. Um, but no, he's just a dude who has decided that me existing made him uncomfortable and was somehow ruining his experience. And he was like, "You were so deep in thought." And I was like, probably how I was like, okay.
I was just like, so you saw I was busy and you
I was
thought you could
busy.
interrupt that piece. Like, you thought that was
Like,
enough for me.
and I put it in my stories, and people who were at the con DM'd me and they were like, "Where is he?" And I was like, a nondescript white man. I couldn't even describe him if I wanted to because they all look and act the same when they're like that. And um but yeah, it's just like little things like that that chip away at our agency and our right to our body. And I've been watching Frontier House on HGTV because I watched or Back to the Frontier because I watched the original Frontier House on PBS where they actually had to live in the wilderness and not
I
eat.
I don't know what you're talking about,
Oh,
but
it's a show on HBO Max and they're making modern day people live like it's the 1800s on the frontier.
I remember that Parks and Rec episode. Was it like
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yeah. And like there's this man who like okay, so like his kids are iPad kids or whatever and probably TikTok influencers and they're adjusting to not having tech. And every time they have an emotion, he makes sure to tell them, "Hey, you're really ruining this for me."
By
And I'm
having
like,
an
"Yeah, by having an emotion." I was like, "Congrats, your father is your first oppressor." And I can tell by the way that the girls, his daughters and his wife talk to other people or whatever, I'm like, he's a real fucking piece of work at home. Like you can just tell at this point.
I know we can, these stories have them
These stories.
forever. I know. Gosh, I went and saw Sketch the other day that it's like a little children's horror movie. It's got Tony Hale in it, and it's about this little girl whose mom has passed and she draws monsters in her notebook, and then the monsters come to life, right? So I'm the only adult in this movie theater without a child, which I think is fine. I just like horror, and I want to see it in all forms. And these little kids are in the movie, right? These little girls are in the movie, and they're laughing and screaming, and they're being told to shush.
No,
And
it's horror. You're allowed to do that in horror.
but
That's the
it's like
rule.
I was like, everyone else in here is a little kid or is accompanying a little kid.
Yeah.
Like what? Like what? Like I just sat there the entire time and I just was like, why are you shushing these kids who are interacting with the movie you brought them to?
You brought them to. I know. Listen, I love to be out in public at a thing that is kind of designed for kids and watching people just like grow to hate their kids the moment that they've stepped on the property. Like Disney World, where like you're like, why are you screaming at your kid? It's Disney World. Like,
Again, yeah. I mean, I get maybe they just, maybe that poor mom had just had a fucking day
yeah.
and you just but in this one moment, I just was thinking about like these little girls are already being told what to do with their bodies in a place where they should be free to emote. And in a dark theater where a blue monster with two legs is coming to life.
All right. I'm gonna move us into our closing out ceremony. Emma, thank you for being here. This was exactly the episode that I've always dreamed of. We had honest and frank conversations about not only abortion but women's health care and all of the wackadoo ways abortion PR is being spread throughout the government. um, what is one lesson you would like to impart onto the listeners about your work in politics and reproductive freedoms?
One lesson?
One lesson that we could stitch onto a pillow.
I think we have two choices right now. And we can keep saying that the world is really, really complicated. But the answer it isn't. It's very simple. And you can either be an upstander or you can be complicit. And there are a lot of different ways to be upstanders, and not all of them look like me and coming onto a podcast or going onto my community and being like, yeah, I'll fight you if you say something about women. It can be really small. It can be like, just like I said, like earlier, was like in your conversations you're having with people, be an upstander. Do not go along with this narrative of how we treat women in this world.
Yeah. Also, open up your scope of women. Like, read a book by women of color. I dare you. Read a queer woman romance or literally just a book about queer women. I dare you. And like if you're going to download the latest Taylor Swift album Life of a Showgirl and you know I've already pre-ordered my copy, then also make sure that you've downloaded SZA's new album or Doechie's or truly anybody. Like we have to start opening like actually it's one thing to like talk like an ally but also put your money towards allyship. Go see women made films, go see women made art, do it and talk about the fact that you're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, this is where I go back to you're on step 6, and I am hoping I can get people on step 1.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's this audience, right? Is we're so far ahead of how do we turn white feminists into working inclusive femininity. But if you are really like, where does one start? Ask someone to have a conversation with you about reproductive health.
Yeah. And what they think about it.
Just what they think about it.
What makes them nervous. Also, as women, we've been made to feel afraid of our own health care, mostly because it causes pain. And that's all we've been told about it.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't have to be like me, who was getting her vagina waxed last week and then asked that woman to donate to her fundraiser for reproductive health. But it's a great place to start.
No, I think that's exactly who you should be. That's fun.
Yeah, I waited till she was down in there because I knew she wouldn't say no to me
Yeah.
for the
Like,
fundraiser.
you've already seen me, so
Let's roll.
$2, please, like anything else. Um, what is something that you would like to manifest with all of us that comes true, hopefully in our near future?
The Wyoming Supreme Court, any day now, is going to come out with a ruling about if abortion is considered healthcare in this state. And my manifesting is that they will say, yes, not only is abortion healthcare in this state, but women's rights do not stop the second they get pregnant or for any other reason tied to their reproductive status.
There it is. Shit. Yeah, because that's also it too, is that I should have the right to healthcare and being healthy, employed, unemployed, pregnant, not pregnant. We've made these things attached to money and funds because of capitalism, but literally, like, I did not ask to be here. So the least you could do is check my temperature. I didn't ask. I did not ask to be here. I would have chosen to be an alien, honestly, at this point. Just an alien on Mars. Just one of those little amoebas in the water that they found on Mars. Emma, is there anything that you would like to plug or make sure that the listeners are following you and all of your adventures?
So much to come, so much to come. But right now, you can find me on Instagram at Emmageddon. And then you can also follow YO United on Instagram. And keep an eye out there if you are in Wyoming, if you are in the Mountain West. We are about to go really hard in this next election season on standing up for reproductive rights, and I hope that we can make an impact.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you so much for doing such hard work every day. When you said I've been driving 6 hours over the mountain and 6 hours back over that mountain, I was like, I never want to be on one mountain. I need everyone to be clear. I never want to be on a mountain. I'm afraid of heights and I'm afraid of mountain roads
And Bigfoot.
and Bigfoot. Actually, like, he's kind of cute and fuzzy, but I'm mostly afraid of just I have to be asleep if we're driving on the mountain. I have to be fully asleep.
Really.
Um, because I have anxiety and it's generalized.
Right. It's scary. I realized I was really afraid of driving on the mountain for a really long time when I was younger. And I was rewatching Simpsons during the pandemic, and I realized that was it. It was because the number of times that Homer like drives off a mountain, I think gave me so much anxiety as a kid.
I got contacts solely because Daria couldn't drive with her glasses because of the blind spot you eventually have with your glasses. I was like, you can't drive with glasses on. Daria was nervous.
That's so funny. I now only drive with my glasses
Yeah,
because my eyes are too old to have contacts in them for too long.
exactly. Well, all right, tolerators, you know where to find us. It's Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram, Natalie K124 on Instagram and TikTok, to all the men I've tolerated before on Pinterest, YouTube, and I dare you to put it in any other social media to see what I've forgotten. And remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including standing in front of grown, educated people. Grown, educated people who have an office that they have been elected into, telling you that there's only one hole down there and that's why tampons are so effective. Smiles are for joy.